In the next few days, we will be reading about the conversion story of Saint Paul. Saint Luke is very clever in the way he tells the story of the conversion of Paul in the Acts of the Apostles. He has actually already introduced him in our first reading yesterday about his story of the execution of Saint Stephen, the Christian martyr. And I don't know, if you listened attentively, you would have noticed the young man Saul. Luke says, while the executioners were busy stoning to death the young man Stephen, they entrusted their cloaks to another young man whose name was Saul, the one who would become Saint Paul. Saul's task was to make sure that the cloaks of the executioners would not get stained by the blood of Stephen. That's how the persecutors start their bloody career. They begin as watchers, as onlookers, serving as lookout persons. It is their souls, not their cloaks, that get stained by the blood of their victims. In today's first reading, the same young man has already graduated from a lookout person to an aggressive fellow witch hunter and death squad member. He was a death squad member. St. Luke tells us how Saul, entered house after house and dragged out men and women and handed them over for imprisonment. Does that sound familiar to you? Nang papasok ng bahay, kinakaladkad ang mga tao at dinudukot sila. He was doing it all on his own because he believed that these Christians were a menace to society. And it is funny that later in the story, in chapter 9, after having done tokhang on so many Christians, he would try to obtain a warrant of arrest from the authorities in order to legitimize what he has done already. Inaresto muna niya at saka siya humihingi ng warrant of arrest. And in one line, St. Luke would say, Saul was trying to destroy the church. That was his objective. Saul was trying to destroy the church. He did not know that from a persecutor, God was just preparing him to become a propagator of the very faith he persecuted. Itong kabataang Pariseo na ito, he was very highly educated. He was educated at the feet of a well-known Pharisee in Jerusalem named Gamaliel. And we read about that Pharisee Gamaliel a few days ago. Noong binasa natin ang chapter 5 of the Acts of the Apostles, ito yung tao na nag-warning sa mga ruling authorities in Jerusalem about the Christians whom they were aggressively hunting down. Listen to what Gamaliel said. If this endeavor or this activity is of human origin, it will destroy itself. But if it comes from God, you will not be able to destroy them. You might even find yourselves fighting against God. Magandang warning yan. You might even find yourselves fighting against God. I think this is exactly the message that should reach the people who are presently red tagging and trying to intimidate those who have been putting up community pantries. Magpapakain ka lang, komunista ka na. And these community pantries have been spontaneously sprouting like mushrooms everywhere else in the rest of the country. The last I heard, hanggang Zamboanga meron na. At siguro, akala ng pulis, there must be somebody behind this movement. And they are suspecting that it might be the Communist Party. Ridiculous. The communists that I know are busy occupying the West Philippine Sea. I am glad that the Maginhawa Community Pantry, pantry ho, hindi party ha, pantry, has reopened today after its initiator was questioned by the Quezon City Police. Sa totoo lang po, our own San Roque Cathedral Parish Community Pantry was also visited yesterday afternoon, by 3 police officers. Our volunteers had to assure them na nakipag-coordinate naman kami with the barangay authorities and that we're following strict protocol to avoid COVID transmission. Gusto lang nating makatulong. Our pantry coordinator is Father Philip Garcia. And by the way, he is celebrating his birthday today. He told me that our volunteers were asked by the police to identify kung sino daw nagpasimuno ng community pantry na ito. And the police were not satisfied when the volunteers said, ang San Roque Cathedral Parish po. They insisted that they needed the exact name of the person responsible for it. Sabi ni Father Philip, patawad po, Bishop, binigay namin ang pangalan ninyo. Ang sabi ko, it's okay. You know, people have got to be so blind not to see God at work in this spontaneous avalanche of goodwill, compassion, and solidarity. How can people feel threatened by that? I have never doubted from day one that the same Jesus who calls himself the bread of life is at work also in the people who have been putting up community pantries around the country. Tandaan ninyo, mga alagad tayo, we are disciples of the man who loved to feed the hungry, the Son of God who even went to the extent of offering all that he could give of himself, of feeding even with his own body and blood for the redemption of sinners. He has multiplied miraculously, not just the food in our community pantries. He has also multiplied the volunteers with just the same basic, simple message. If you can give what you can and take only what you need, no one of us will be left hungry. Sabi din ni Jesus, I will not reject anyone who comes to me. I will not reject anyone who takes part in my mission as the bread of life. Remember, Jesus did not send home the people who were hungry, just as he also did not reject the 5 loaves and 2 fish contributed by a poor boy. Ganoon din po sa ating community pantries. We will not refuse even 5 pieces of soda crackers or 2 pieces of cup noodles from everyone. Just as we will not reject even those who might be taking advantage. We will not reject them. But sorry, we cannot stop the rest of those in line from taking a video of their opportunism to make them go viral in the social media. The spoilers of this wonderful initiative will not succeed. Sabi nga ni Gamaliel, they may even find themselves fighting against God.